Today on the Bourbon Bytes Podcast, Buffalo Trace yet again releases 2 new wheat whiskeys. We talk about some distilleries getting nerdy with their corn varieties. And Heaven Hill wins big at the 2025 New Orleans Spirits Competition. Plus, we'll find out if the Los Angeles Dodgers Maker's Mark champion selection is a foul ball or a home run. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bourbon Bytes Podcast, whiskey reviews with a gaming twist. I'm your host, Clifton, and welcome to the week of Thursday, July 31st. Just like I said last week, the summer is flying by, but hopefully you guys are enjoying it. I just went to the Orange County Fair over the weekend, had to have some fair food with some fried pickles and some fried Oreos and a lot of carne asada. I always feel like the fair rejuvenates me a bit. I guess maybe just 'cause I've been going since I was, younger, but I just like, going right around sunset, people watching, just kind of enjoying the vibe. So I don't know. Are you a fair person or are you a absolutely not fair person? Because I feel like there's 2 different types of people, right? Either you're really excited about the really greasy, bad for you food, or you think you're too good for it. Okay, not really like that, but I don't know. I get it. Some people may not like it, but for me, I do enjoy to indulge a little bit when I can. Kind of reminds me of the South and all the great eats we had back there. Although I don't think California fairs compete on the level of state fairs in the South or maybe even the Midwest. I think we kind of have that that area beat, but everything else, I think, entertainment-wise is better out here. But I gotta say, a Southern fair in the fall is just, my happy place. But we're not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about the latest and greatest news in the world of whiskey and review something cool. And I think this bottle is very appropriate for me to be talking about California vibes because later on in the review, I'll be reviewing the special edition LA Dodgers Champion Selection from Maker's Mark. I saw this bottle go on sale and I thought it was just a fancy wax, but no, there is much more to it. So we'll get into that later. We got some news to get into first. So pour yourself a glass or a cup of coffee, depending on when you're listening to this, and stay tuned for the news. I feel like we start off every week with the Buffalo Trace story, but they're just really coming out with a ton of news around the time that I'm restarting this podcast. So last week we talked about the new E.H. Taylor Distillers Council release. Well, Buffalo Trace is back at it again with a brand new, not 1, but 2 releases announced this week, including Weller 18, which is the oldest age-stated whiskey in the Weller lineup to date. Now, this isn't your ordinary Weller. This one comes in a very special box. It's very reminiscent of the Double Eagle Very Rare presentation. Beautiful glass decanter. It is coming as a travel retail exclusive. Coming in at 90 proof and aged 18 years, it's only going to be available at select international airport duty-free shops, including LAX, which I happen to live right by, JFK, and LHR. But what's unique is Weller 18 is not the same mash bill as the traditional Weller, so it's not the same, high wheat bourbon mash bill that we see in like Weller 12, Weller Special Reserve, Antique. Now this is technically a wheat whiskey, which means it's made with at least 51% wheat in the mash bill. Buffalo Trace isn't going to reveal the mash bill just like they don't on most of their products, but we do know that it's legally a wheat whiskey and that it's different than the other well-known wheated bourbons like Weller and Pappy and things like that. It's its own mash bill. Now, Harlan Wheatley, who is Buffalo Trace's master distiller, says that Weller 18 is the culmination of curiosity, tradition, and time. Wheat has a softness that can sometimes get lost with age, but here it's evolved into something rich and beautifully expressive. We're extremely proud of the resulting whiskey, which showcases the versatility and potential of a wheat-forward mash bill. I think it's interesting that they did stray away from the traditional wheated bourbon mash bill that they have on other Weller products. I guess it's good that they went with a different bottle design, because if this had just been like a Weller 12, but they changed the 12 to an 18, they colored it purple, I don't know, whatever color that would come up next, I think people would be very confused about why it's a different mash bill. But this one comes in a crystal decanter, very similar to the one for the Weller Millennium, which we'll talk about in just a second. And it has a sliding presentation case, which is kind of what reminded me of the Double Eagle Very Rare. So it's not quite, that level of presentation, but it's definitely very unique looking. Suggested retail on it is $499 for a 700 milliliter bottle. What can I say, right, about Weller? It's so hard to kind of get a read on if that's a good price or a bad price. I know people pay a ton of money for other Weller products. I think retail on like the full proof was supposed to be $50, but I've seen, pics of it going for like $80 to $100. $500 for an 18-year-old Weller to me, I think I'll pass on it, unless you guys really convince me next time I'm in LAX and you guys are like, Clifton, you have to try it for the podcast or the stream. Then maybe you'll convince me. But otherwise, I think I'll pass on it. But it is an interesting release. And it's not the only one because, like I said, they're coming out with the Weller Millennium 2. This is their second release ever of the Weller Millennium lineup. It was introduced last May as the most premium bottle in the entire Weller lineup with a suggested retail price of $7,500. Yes, you heard that right. $7,500 retail. Now, we don't know what that's going to go for on secondary, if it will have a secondary market. I don't know. It's always difficult with these really high-aged products to tell if they're going to, be a huge success. I mean, I just got an email from Total Wine recently about a Double Eagle Very Rare, which is probably why it's top of mind. They were selling it a bit over retail, but they had it in stock. So it's like, are these really selling, or are they just kind of selling to the select few mega rich collectors out there? Because there's a chance that that's the case too. But I don't know. I think it's interesting that they're releasing these at the same time because one, once you hear that this one's $7,500, you look back at that $499 of the Weller 18, you're like, oh, that's not that bad. And they do come in a similar bottle too. So it's like, it kind of depends, like, what is your level of collector? To me, I don't know. I'm a bourbon drinker versus a bourbon collector. I think I won't be picking up either of them. But yeah, if I was gonna buy one just to have, I'm definitely more in the $499 range than the $7,500 range. This year's release features a marriage of whiskeys distilled in 2001, which is 2.9% of it, 2003, which is 46.5% of it, and 2006, which is 50.6% of it. I'm not good at math, but that does seem to add up to 100. So they do tell you what all is in it. They don't tell you how much of that is the wheat whiskey and how much of it is the wheated bourbon. But it is coming in at 99 proof. Now, the way to differentiate this between the Millennium No. 1 release is that one had a white label on it, whereas this one has a gold label that kind of gives you the details on what's in it. Now, according to Andrew Duncan, who is their global brand ambassador, they think that this edition takes things a step further with a blend that they humbly, as they release this product, believe is an improvement over the well-regarded first edition. It says they have revisited a chapter in the distillery's history that shaped who they are today, with these older whiskeys being part of the blend. Now, as with almost every Buffalo Trace release, this one is going to be highly allocated. They're going to have it available at the Buffalo Trace gift shop along with Legacy des Forges, which is an online platform created through a collaboration between Sazerac and Block Bar. I'm looking at the Legacy des Forges website, and it does have the listing for the Weller Millennium 2. The auction is live now, actually. There's a bid. The starting bid is $8,000, which is interesting. Wow. Okay. I need to do a little bit more research on this Legacy des Forges website. It seems like they're kind of auctioning off some Buffalo Trace products. So that's a topic for another day. I won't speak on what I don't know. That's my lesson for today. But what I do know very well is Old Forester's 1910 Extra Old Bourbon. But we're not talking the initial release from back in 2021. This is a new addition to the 117 series, which is their more limited, usually they're sold in 375 bottles, releases. And they're calling this one 1910 Extra Old. So it's taking everything that Old Forester fans love about the 1910 expression and doubling it. So it's the same process. They're going to do an extra age on it. So a double-barreled whiskey, but this one is aged for an additional 24 months in heavily charred secondary oak. So that's the same kind of process as the standard 1910, but for a much, much longer period of time. They say that this bourbon exemplifies our innovative spirit at Old Forester by taking something great and making it even better. The additional maturation levels to produce this release unlocked incredibly robust and distinctive flavor. So, fun fact, or I guess not so fun fact, the 1910 series is named after a fire that struck the Old Forester distillery back in 1910, and they actually had to take the whiskey out of the existing barrels and put them into a new barrel before bottling because of all the fire damage. So that rebarreling process is what the 1910, Old Forester 1910 on the Whiskey Row series is named after, but this release as well. It's supposed to be everything we love about 1910, but with a bolder oak influence and richer flavor, and I'm here for it. I will say the one that I love the most out of the Whiskey Row series was the Old Forester 1924. To me, that one was a different mash bill, and it just had a whole overall different flavor profile that I really, really fell in love with. But after spending some time with it and going back to the 1910, I saw a lot of similarities that I appreciated from the 1924 in the 1910. So I think in terms of standard releases, the 1910 is still the way to go for me. But I will definitely be seeking out a bottle of this extra old 1910. Now it's going to retail for $64.99 and 93 proof. It's going to be sold in limited quantities at the distillery and select Kentucky retailers, but it's also available for customers in DC, Kentucky, Nebraska, New Hampshire, and North Dakota at shop.oldforester.com. So unfortunately, it's not one that I can go out and grab today, but I hope one day to get a taste of it because, like I said, someone that loves a big, bold, rich, oaky flavor, this sounds right up my alley. And, anything with extra oak and extra maturation, I'm going to be here for. So let me know if you guys get a chance to try it and let me know how it compares to 1910. I'd love to do a side-by-side, but if you're able to do so, let me know how you think. Do you think it's worth the extra price or the limited release, or are you happy just sticking with the original 1910? Would love to know your answer. Now, here's an interesting one. I came across a fun article from shortlist.com talking about how corn, or more specifically, heirloom corn, is making a comeback in the world of whiskey. And this kind of resonates with my home state of South Carolina and the city that I fell in love with and went to college in, Charleston. Highwire Distilling has been doing a red corn whiskey for years. I mean, they did it back when I lived there. So we're talking almost a decade. This heirloom corn is called James Island Red. So the bourbon they release is called Jimmy Red. It's 100% corn bourbon made from that corn. And I think things like that are what make these distilleries stand out, even amongst a sea of craft distilleries. Bringing back something that has tradition and has relevancy to the region where it's, made is a way to introduce people, one, to the culture and the history of the region, and two, to the unique flavors of, the area. I mean, I love Charleston culture. I love Charleston cuisine. So when I saw that they were making a whiskey out of a red corn that was grown just there on James Island, to me, I had to buy a bottle. Actually, I still have a bottle that I haven't opened of a single barrel I bought from them. So maybe one day I'll open that. I don't know. I've been holding on to it. I think it just looks really cool. And it's just kind of a nice conversation piece. I'll find a day to open it sometime soon. It's not like something super special, but I just think it's kind of cool that to have that in my collection. And there's a quote from Scott Blackwell, who's the one that runs that distillery. And he says he thinks that there's a potential for corn and bourbon to be explored in ways akin to the appreciation of flavor notes in wine or chocolate. Products that, as consumers, we have so much more knowledge about, and especially since corn is the primary ingredient for the drink. But Highwire Distilling, of course, isn't the only one using heirloom and heritage corn in their whiskey. Jephthah Creed, who's been making Bloody Butcher whiskey for a long time, as well as Bruce's Blue Corn. But now they're experimenting with a new variety, or new to the world of whiskey variety, called Hickey King Corn. So I would love to sit down and try a flight of all these different whiskeys made the exact same way, aged the same amount of time, and see how much that corn can influence the flavor. Because we know grains matter. I mean, we look at a lot of distilleries that source, local grains, and there's a huge variation in flavor between like a rye whiskey sourced from New York or a rye whiskey sourced from Canada. I mean, there's such a flavor variation in that alone that I think it's so fun to see. Let's get more nitpicky. Let's not just say corn. Tell me about the corn. Where's it from? Is it have a historical significance to where it's being grown and play a part into the whiskey culture of Oklahoma or wherever you're making it. I love seeing new things like this. It's not like changing the world of whiskey. We're not like adding weird things into whiskey to make it taste different. We're just experimenting with different, strains of the grains that go in it. And I'm all here for that. Let me know what's the craziest whiskey ingredient you've heard of being added to a whiskey. I know there's some distilleries that do some things with some rice. There's some distilleries that do, oh gosh, lots of interesting things. But let me know, what's the craziest grain you've seen put in a whiskey that can still legally be called whiskey? Would love to know. Leave a comment on my Discord channel, which, by the way, if you're not yet on, you can join at bourbonbytes.com, completely free. But if you are a member of our Bite Club, which is our membership program, you get access to some exclusive rooms like our VIP lounge, our gaming sessions, our monthly movie nights, our tasting parties for certain tiers and higher. It's just a great community of whiskey-loving friends. It's a relatively small community, so don't feel like you're going to go in and get overwhelmed by, thousands of people. There's probably a good active 10 to 15 on the regular, and then, of course, plenty more that come in and out. But, relatively small group. Would love to have you a part of it. We're always looking for new members, and come drink with us. It's a lot of fun. So bourbonbytes.com is where you can join the Discord as well as join the Bite Club, which is, like I said, the membership program. So, but wherever you choose to support me, just make sure you're following me on your favorite social media platform at Bourbon Bytes and your favorite podcast app, which you're hopefully listening to this on now. Now, one quick last piece of news, just because I want to highlight an achievement from one of my favorite distilleries. Heaven Hill was actually named the Distillery of the Year at the 2025 New Orleans Spirits Competition. This is held every year, and they have a slew of winnings this year of best category. So I'll just run through them real quick. They got Best Bottle and Bond Bourbon with Heaven Hill Bottle and Bond, Best Non-Aged Shaded Bourbon with Evan Williams 1783. Great bottle for the price, by the way. That's been kind of like a sleeper, I think, in their lineup. Best Bourbon 5 to 10 years old was actually the Heaven Hill Grain to Glass. We did bourbon. I haven't had a chance to try that, but I've heard good things about that series. Speaking of corn, Best Corn Whiskey, Mellow Corn. Of course, it's more of a staple in the world of corn whiskey. Not heirloom or anything crazy like we just talked about, but Best Corn Whiskey. Maybe one of those other brands will bring in some competition in future years. I'd love to see, as much as I love Mellow Corn, I'd love to see something beat it out a bit. Sorry, love you, Bernie lovers. Love you, Heaven Hill. But yeah, we definitely need some more corn whiskey. I'm here for it. They also won for Best Finished Bourbon with Elijah Craig Toasted Barrel, and surprisingly, Best Añejo Tequila with Tequila Ocho Añejo. And I've heard good things about that as well. So congratulations to the folks over at Heaven Hill Brands. You guys continue to knock it out of the park. There's a reason you're my favorite distillery. But, I love a little competition here and there. So let's see who brings it in the 2026 New Orleans Spirits Competition. All right, well, that does it for the hottest news of the week that I was able to find, at least. If I find anything else, I'll post it on the Discord server. But I think it's time for our bite-sized review. Now, like I said, this one is a very, very relevant one for me living in Southern California. This is a collaboration between Maker's Mark and the Los Angeles Dodgers Foundation. It's a limited edition bourbon commemorating the team's 2024 World Series victory. Now, I did not attend that game. I'm not the biggest, sports person, if you wouldn't have guessed that already by now. But I do know that that was probably one of the most watched things that anyone I know has ever seen. I mean, I remember when the win happened, I was sitting, I think I was sitting on my apartment balcony, just kind of like hanging out. And I just heard like screams from all over, cheers. I kind of was scared at first. I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? Why is screams coming at me from every direction, everywhere? And then of course fireworks, and it was a crazy moment, but like not knowing what it was freaked me that freak out. But once I realized what it was, which was very, very quick, I was very excited for my city. So yeah, this release officially came out this summer. I saw it hit the stores, and like I said, I ignored it because I was like, oh, it's just a blue wax Makers. I've seen that before. But no, this one actually, it's a unique product, which we'll talk about. But two, the proceeds from it are supporting wildfire relief efforts across Los Angeles. If you remember, of course, earlier this year, we had some devastating wildfires across the Malibu area, Altadena. But more about this bottle. Retail on it is only $74.99, and I say only because I feel like something like this is a high collectible item, and I'm surprised that it was still available when I grabbed it this past weekend. And what's really cool about this one, like I said, it's called Maker's Mark Champion Selection, hand-selected by the Los Angeles Dodgers 2024 World Champions. It has a dark blue wax, which makes it very, very unique. It definitely stands out on the shelf. Now, underneath the wax is still the standard red cork. Yeah, this one comes in at 112.1 proof or 56.05. It is Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey barrel finished with 10 oak staves. So you guessed it, it's basically the maker's private selection process, but hand selected by the Dodgers. And the oak bill for this, if you're curious about what staves they use 3 of the baked American Pure number 2, 5 of the seared French Cuvée, 1 of the Maker's Mark 46, and 1 of the toasted French spice. So that was the custom oak staves used for this release. Now it's a little confusing because it does say that the first barrel of this was approximately 275 bottles and has been donated to the LA Dodgers Foundation for charitable auctions and events. And those proceeds will go to wildfire relief and recovery efforts. So I can't tell if they're saying there was only 275 bottles of this. I mean, there's a chance. I mean, they went really fast. That just seems relatively low for the amount of Dodgers fans. You would think they would have done like at least a few different picks, but I don't have any clarifying information on that. If someone happens to know if there's more, maybe I just got one of the very limited bottles. But if it is, I'm still happy that I'm opening it and sharing with you guys instead of putting it in the closet and forgetting about it and becoming a millionaire in several years. We'll not think about that. We're gonna enjoy it while we can. So let's go ahead and get that bottle opened. Nice. Appropriate cork pop for a baseball bourbon. Let's give it a nose. Okay. Not what I expected from a typical Maker's Mark. I've been enjoying the 2025 Keepers release, and this one definitely goes a different direction than that one. I reviewed that previously, by the way. Check out that replay. But the nose of this, it's sweet. It's definitely in the milk chocolate category. Maybe a little bit of peanut brittle there as well. It's almost making me think of a baseball baseball stadium. I'm reading the description here, and they do say caramel coated popcorn and spiced peanuts. So it almost seemed like that was intentional. They were going for a real full Dodgers experience. Now, I'm just hoping this doesn't taste like a Dodger dog, but nose, it's great. It's sweet. It's desserty. It's yeah. It definitely doesn't scream Maker's Mark. It doesn't scream wheated bourbon. Let's go and give it a taste. Cheers, and go Dodgers. Oh yeah, you know what? Maybe I've convinced myself now because the first thing I thought of on the palate was Cracker Jacks. I mean, I've never had Cracker Jacks at a baseball game, but I figure that's what one does in 1950s Americana. But yeah, it is like caramel popcorn. That was their note that they gave on their press release. But absolutely, that's so like dominant of a note on the palate. Wow. I mean, it's got a nice spice to it too. It's not all caramel. There's a nice bit of a baking spice on the back end of that. So it's not one note at all. It's really complex. That second sip to me was spicier, still sweet, but a lot more of the oak and the spices came out on second sip. It's a buttery finish. So it's not the longest, but it's definitely a medium finish. But it's sweet, it's like buttery, and it brings it right back to that caramel corn note that we got at the top of it. Wow. What a good Maker's Mark selection. Well done, Los Angeles Dodgers. Who knew you had it in you? The Dodgers totally hit it out of the park with this one. Sorry, couldn't resist. All right, well, that does it for this week's episode. Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. I promise I will try to read them out on an upcoming podcast. Always great to see you guys leaving feedback on the podcast and the YouTube channel, of course. Speaking of YouTube, I go live every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Come say hello, say you're from the podcast. I would love to meet some of you that I don't interact with more regularly. But until next time, this has been the Bourbon Bytes Podcast, a whiskey podcast with a, I guess, baseball twist this week. I don't know. Cheers, and I will talk to you guys next episode.